Okay. Professor Vladimir, what do you think Putin is going to do now?
What is going to do now? First of all, I would like to say to you and to the distinguished audience that the repeating gossips about the Russian invasion to Ukraine seems to be a kind of manic madness. If I were a psychologist, I could call it so. That is manic madness. There was never such an idea of the part of Russia as to invade Ukraine. That is the first. The second is that, as I am politologist, I could say that it is a kind of wishful thing, a wishful sleeping, because somebody in the West and in the NATO would like very much the war between Ukraine and Russia, but neither Russia does want this war nor in Ukraine. As President Zelensky said, that they are not eager to wage a war now against Russia. He said that he can solve these problems in diplomatic way. So as to what President Putin would like to do now, it's quite evident. He would like a peaceful solution of all questions which divide now Russia and Ukraine, and not only Russia and Ukraine, but also Ukraine itself. Because what is going now in Ukraine, it is a civil war between the eastern provinces, Lugansk and Donetsk, and Kiev. And the only possible legal platform for solution of this crisis would be the Minsk agreement. And Russia insists that Minsk agreement should be fulfilled, first of all, by Kiev. If not, then the war will continue. And the Russian public opinion supports the people of eastern provinces of Ukraine because what is happening now there is genocide. I have students from Donetsk, from Lugansk in my university, and they say that this terrible artillery shootings against Donetsk and Lugansk, which were sometimes ago, were terrible because the people died in spite of it. Why should the people die in a peaceful time? And the public opinion in Russia is seriously thinking about recognizing these republics of Donetsk and Lugansk. And
you make it look so easy, Professor. Professor Vladimir. Mr. Vasil wants to respond from Kiev. You make it look so easy. Well, you say that we had never got any aggressive intentions on Ukraine. There are brothers. Then why did you amass 100,000 troops on their border? Mr. Vasil wants to respond to you, please. And even now, you're putting pressure on them.
Well, first of all, on the record.
Okay. Mr. Vasil responding. He's a former spokesperson of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's responding to you, sir.
To claim that we have civil war. If there was no Russian invasion in 2014, there would be no war at all. It's Russia's responsibility for illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory in Crimea. It's Russian responsibility in sending arms, thousands of guns, of tanks to Donetsk. If there was no Russia, there would be nothing in Donbass. It would be as peaceful and prosperous as it used to be before 2014. So please don't put this headache on our head. It's your responsibility. Let's stop it. Where I agree with you that neither Ukrainians nor Russians want this war. But what is really important, it's not 2014, it's not Crimea. Today, if Russia invaded Ukraine, it would be suicide for Russia, first of all, because Russian tanks and soldiers will not be welcomed here with flowers. There would be every street, there would be hell for Russian soldiers, and I presume Russian intelligence and political authorities are aware about it, that it would be Second World War scale of fighting, which would be suicide for Russia as well, which would be horrible result for both countries, but which would be also end for Russian imperialism as well. I'm pretty sure in this. But I would like to turn this into something more important here. Yes, it's good that sides talk. Yes, it's very good that Putin give a chance for diplomacy. European architecture of security has been destroyed. And we are the victim of the destruction of this European security architecture. And we must come to the table, all of us, we must come to the table and peacefully discuss our disagreements and agree how new European security should look like. And it's not only for Europe important, it's important even for countries which are present here, like India or China, because don't forget, Ukraine is the only country peacefully denounced nuclear arms, received guarantees from countries from UN Security Council, and then Ukraine was attacked by one of UN Security Council members. So if Ukrainian conflict will not be settled with respect to our territorial integrity and return Crimea and Donbass to Ukraine, then all the countries in the world will have to learn the lessons that accept nuclear weapons. There is no any other way to defend countries.
I think one point which I want Brian to come in on, I think, is it a foregone conclusion that Russia will walk over Ukraine whenever it wants? Because the voices we hear from Ukraine are there will be bloody fighting and Putin may be biting off more than he can chew. It's all right to apply the pressure when it's one-sided, Brian, but everyone's saying from Ukraine that Ukraine is not Crimea, 2022 is not 2014 or 2015.
First of all, in answer to your question, what Vasily just said a second ago, Ukraine was not the only country to give up its nuclear weapons. Kazakhstan and Belarus also did, by the way, and the United Kingdom and the US have breached the terms of the Budapest Memorandum regarding Belarus by interfering in its domestic politics. But anyway, that's another question. About that, there is no doubt that any Russian incursion into Ukraine now would not be like Crimea in 2014. In Crimea, about 90% of the population were kind of pro-Russian. Barely a shot was fired. The Ukrainian Navy, most of them defected to Russia at the time, as you will remember, including the commander. That would not happen now. There is no way the Ukrainian military in Kyiv or Lviv or Dnipropetrovsk is going to defect to the Russian side. That's not going to happen. But the point about it is that there's a misconception here, I think, that if there were a Russian invasion of Ukraine, which I don't think there will be, that it would be a Second World War type conflict. I mean, Russia has like America, Russia has overwhelming air, missile, and technological superiority over Ukraine. It'd be much more like what Ukraine did in Iraq back in, or it's not Ukraine, sorry, the USA did when it legally invaded Iraq 20 years ago. It'd be much more like that than it would be like, Stalingrad or something. I mean, they're not, they're not going to send in 500,000 men, or women nowadays and try to occupy cities. That's not going to happen. I mean, if there ever were a war between Russia and Ukraine, it would be something more like Desert Storm than Operation Barbarossa. I mean, that's the reality. Of course, nobody wants that war. And what Vasily said is totally correct. Nobody in Russia or Ukraine wants a war. And what Russia wants is the European security architecture to be redesigned. Because one thing I'd like to say is that we're talking about the Soviet Union broke up 30 years ago.